Namaskar friends, good evening. I welcome you to the inaugural online panel discussion hosted by Lawyer's Voice. Today's topic of discussion is the menace of fake news, Indian polity and legal aspects. The Supreme Court of India have recently dealt with the problem of fake news being circulated in the nation in regards to the coronavirus pandemic. The Supreme Court observed media should maintain a strong sense of responsibility while disseminating news on coronavirus and should ensure that unverified and fake news is not published. Nonetheless, the pandemic of fake news is not limited to the coronavirus issue or to the mainstream media and is all pervasive in every sphere of activity and information flow. The advent of social media platforms has given the menace of fake news the opportunity to reach the proportions which with disastrous consequences in real world. But is the platform solely to be blamed or the content generator? To discuss such issues and more with us and speak on today's topic, we have with us distinguished personalities. We have amongst us Honorable Mr. Justice retired Badar Durrez Ahmed ji, Senior Advocate Shri Chetan Sharma ji, and Shri Bhupendra Chaubey ji. The viewers are invited to post their question in the comment box on YouTube and Facebook. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. I would like to invite Advocate Shri Anil Soni ji, former Additional Advocate General of Punjab and presently Standing Counsel, Union of India at Delhi High Court, to formally open the session with his words of wisdom and tell us about the organization Lawyer's Voice. Anil Soni ji.
Good evening to all ladies and gentlemen who have joined us and those who will join us in the future. A very good evening. Today, we are here for a panel discussion on the stage of Lawyer's Voice. And what Lawyer's Voice is, an organization, I'll just give you a brief history. Before that, I would just like to say that the lockdown has made us do a lot of innovations. And today we are online, which we would not have been. Video conferencing in the courts, seminars being held, panel discussions being held online. Everything is innovative for us at this age, I would say, not for the youngsters. But then many youngsters have learned cooking and cleaning utensils as well. So anyway, that's on the lighter side. As far as the Lawyer's Voice is concerned, I welcome you all and give you a brief history of Lawyer's Voice, which was established over 2 decades ago for the welfare of the lawyers. It's a registered society. It's there to promote and protect the legal profession, file PILs for greater justice, have other group of lawyers and weaker sections of the society to the upliftment of them, to organize seminars, debates, social get-togethers, talks, and even sports and cultural events, which have been held in the past as well. And also to enhance an awareness of the people for environment and pollution and to organize plantation and other pollution control campaigns. Well, I wish everyone a very healthy future and welcome you all for this panel discussion on menace of fake news, Indian polity and legal aspects. Just before that, I would just like to say that I just received a SMS. What Justice S.K. Kaul has said on this has said, I quote, tolerance levels in all sections going down. Mindless forwarding of messages leads to fake news. This is one point that has come. We shall start the panel discussion. I'll send it over to Piyush. Piyush, thank you.
I thank Anil Soni ji for his words, and now it is my privilege and honor to welcome Senior Advocate Shri Chetan Sharma ji to share his thoughts and views on the topic. Shri Chetan Sharma ji was designated as a Senior Advocate in October 2002, and he is among the youngest of the advocates to have been designated as a senior. He is a first-generation lawyer, with both his parents being eminent educationists. He has been a topper and an all-rounder, having won quite a few All India school, college, and university debates and declamations. Proof of his versatile personality is the fact that he was also a sports commentator for Asiad 82 and the youngest TV test match commentator. He has practiced in all major jurisdictions and his contributions are reported in major case laws on CPC, arbitration, and criminal law. He has also authored revised work on law of specific performance. He is among those who is brief across the spectrum of jurisdictions and courts across the country. Shri Chetan Sharma ji.
Namaskar. Thank you so much, Piyush. And I must compliment Lawyer's Voice for hosting this most germane topic of the present times, fake news. Like COVID-19, fake news is also a pandemic of sorts. With the multitude of population that we have and the 300 million odd Facebook users, which is the largest in the world, and more than 230, 280 million WhatsApp groups, and 1.4 billion cell phones to boot. We have probably the largest repository of social media in the world. And no wonder when we step into the virtual world, when social takes over and mainstream media takes a reverse, then there is bound to be a metamorphosis of sorts. There's a churning which goes on, and this churning throws up both the Amrit and the wish. Unfortunately, there is no Lord Shiva to take the wish, and this wish has then, come out in the form of a menace of fake news. So this is the poison of the manthan of the times that we have visited with. Having said this, the topic today is fake news, the menace of fake news, the legal and the political aspects thereof. Now, insofar as the law is concerned, fake news has not been defined anywhere in either in a statute or in the IPC. We are governed basically by the IPC, and we look to the IPC only to see what we can do to thwart, to plug, to filter, and to make it a deterrent of those who indulge in fake news. See, what we have is a myriad spectrum. We can look to section 124A, 153, 153A, 153AA capital, 501, 505, 270, 271, and 196 and 188. Now, these are all the sections in the IPC which, as a conglomerate, will give you some idea as to what we can do to plug this menace. What is fake news? You all know. A fake news can make somebody a high court judge when he is not. A fake news can make you a villain. A fake news can incite a communal riot. A fake news can throw up doctors on COVID. Fake news can give you night, and fake news can make you COVID positive, make you COVID negative. The world you can think of, that is fake news for you. That it has on politics. And the leak is, insofar as I've just outlined what are the sections in the IPC that you can take care of. Fortunately or unfortunately, the basic section that comes to light is defamation. But then in defamation, the person so defamed has to come into court specifically. We are not unaware of the fact as to the people defamed, including our very own Mr. Jetli. He had to step into the witness box, to prosecute the aspect of defamation. A lot of people would not therefore want to come into court. They would want the law to take its course. See the plight of the polity today. It grapples with a situation where anybody and anybody out of these millions of users can throw up some sort of a rumor, some sort of a fake news. I mean, you have the migrant problem is there. We can't deny the fact that it's not there. But the government is doing so much to alleviate it. But nobody sees that part of the direction. What is being done is pictures from neighboring countries, pictures 2 years back, 3 years back, 4 years back of a human problem are being tagged along. And the audio visual effect of this is that people are saying, oh ho, ye kya ho gaya? Ye to usse bhi badi tragedy aa gayi. Now, this is fake news. You influence a mind, you influence a whole psyche of people. You don't see the true picture as it is. And this is not only in these times. It was there in the when the elections took place. 687 pages of Facebook had to be removed on orders of the election commission of a mainstream political party. But more than this, it also affects people in business. It affects people in professional rivalries. You can have fake news, or you can have a generated vision of things and put it out. You can have people whose character is assassinated all over. You can have people who can join the Me Too gang. You can do anything with anybody. This gives so much of leverage that today we are not in a position to interpret Article 19.2 of the Constitution. 19.2, which guarantees freedom of expression, pardon my saying so, this is my personal view, is grossly misused today. In the light of the volcanic eruption of social media, the reasonable restrictions in 19.2 pale into almost insignificance. There is one judgment of the Hon'ble Supreme Court of 1957, which dealt with the precedence of Article 19.2 over freedom of expression, which more or less has held the field. But in the onslaught of the social media and everybody and anybody having a say of any kind, the reasonable restrictions in 19.2 need to be bolstered. If we are to save society from being divided, if we are to save the social fabric, if we are to save the nation also. A case in point is the CAA agitation. A case in point is the JNU agitation. Just see the limits to which freedom of expression has gone. It has not stopped. The Tukde gang, sedition at its worst, slander at its crescendo, all came within the umbrella of freedom of speech. So, and fueled by what? Fueled by rumors. You had a particular audio-visual video which probably showed a policeman running after a student. That was not the true incident in the perspective. The cops were assaulted, and when they went to look forward, it was made out as if this is an assault. In came the whole phalanx of people to say, "Oh, dekho kya zati ho rahi hai." And then comes the incendiary provocative speeches and situation which is on a boil. You have a situation which is on a boil. Now, this is all because of what? This is because of fake news. Now, what can the CRPC do? The CRPC can only grope, pardon my saying so, to 501 to 505, section 505 IPC, or it can look to section 153, 153A, 153 capital A, or maximum 124A. Pardon my saying so, these are all non-cognizable offenses except for 124A. So the moment you try to take on head-on the people who indulge in this crime, if, pardon my saying so, it's a non-cognizable offense. And because maximum period is 3 years, bail is also Kumar would for on the legal asking 505 capital A to 505 to make it a cognizable offense for the offenses relating to 505 capital A to be inserted relating to offenses of 124A, 153, 153A, 153 capital A, 501 and 505. Make it cognizable, make it non-bailable and non-compoundable of course. This would nip the evil in the bud. This would put deterrence in the minds of those who deliberately undermine the fabric, the social fabric, undermine the social and cultural fabric of India, the security of India. I mean, you have people who, on the basis of this provocation, can even say that cut off the chicken neck area in Shiliguri and India will be on its haunches. Why? Why go that far? So how does the law meet this situation? You will have to amend the law. And I would also say that apart from the addition of section 505 capital A, there should also be an addition 271A after 271 with the addition of a particular phrase, which is whosoever incites.
Chetanji,
whosoever incites, till such time that this phrase comes into the statute book, there would be a loophole which would be taken advantage of.
Chetanji, there's some issue with the video. May I interject with your permission? There's some issues with the video on your end. So may I request it to be sorted out?
Yeah, in the meantime, the other, I'll do my.
Much obliged. So I would thank Mr. Chetanji for his words of wisdom, and I would now like to invite Shri Bhupendra Chaubey ji to share his thoughts on the topic. Mr. Bhupendra Chaubey has been the face of political journalism in India for well over last 2 decades. He stepped down as executive editor of CNN News 18 in April this year, and now striving to create a new format of news delivery and consumption through his widely watched digital show called Talk to Bhupendra, which is India's only show simulcast live across all platforms. So now we had the views from a senior advocate who combined the facts and the issues with law. Now we'll have the opinion of someone who is there giving out news, and how does one who is giving out a person who is dealing it in day-to-day life of his, how does he deal with the menace of fake news? Bhupendra Chaubey ji.
Thanks very much, Piyush. Good evening and welcome to all the viewers who will be joining in this Sunday evening. Let me first thank Lawyer's Voice for having organized this session, which I think in times of post-COVID, or even as much as it was relevant in pre-COVID times, I think it's become even more relevant post-COVID. Let me also express my sincere thanks and my sincere best wishes to Justice Ahmed, whose career I have followed very closely. All my friends in the judiciary speak very highly about Justice Ahmed, and what a great pleasure it is for me to be on the same panel as Justice Ahmed. Let me straight away attack the proposition which is there before the House today. And I listened with great interest to what our learned friend Chetan Sharma was talking about. And I think in the ambit which was created, in the ambit that was created by Chetanji, in that ambit itself, there was enough for us to understand why fake news is so very pertinent for us. Firstly, to try and figure out what exactly is fake news, and then for jurists like the ones who are on this panel today to try and put their thoughts together, to try and put their heads together to figure out what could be a possible legal or a judicial remedy to what has clearly become the biggest crisis of our times, the biggest pandemic, I would say, to quote Justice Sanjay Kaul himself, who has said that today in the morning when he was talking about it, the exact quote which he's saying is that this whole business of fake news is as bad. Fake news is more dangerous than coronavirus itself, and ramifications being manifold. I couldn't agree more with what Justice Kaul has said. Let me just put it in the context of what Chetanji was talking about for all the viewers to understand exactly what becomes fake news at what time. Now, reference was made to some, an anti-scale protester who was speaking at Shine Bagh in Jammu and ended up making some reference about how one arm of India could be chopped off, or somebody apparently raising seditious slogans at Jawaharlal Nehru University. The truth is that for the longest time, with the evidence that was presented on both sides, depending on which side of the political divide you were on, you would have perhaps agreed with both sides. Specifically in the context of the anti-CA protests, while there was a straightforward political proposition which existed, it is also true that using social media, using videos which can be clipped, you can make a certain proposition appear to be more weighty than the other proposition. My problem today, and I say this as a journalist, my problem today is that I don't think jurists in this mind have really shown the bravery which needs to be shown, not just for fake news, but to rework this balance which exists between freedom of speech and justifying fake news. There are judgments which have been made. I think the Supreme Court itself last year gave a judgment in a specific case where it was said that since the journalist's job is to hold the powers that be available, now in the process of holding the powers that be accountable, if the journalist ends up stuff of false even then, the Indian Constitution must come and protect their journalists. I'm also that kind of sentiment. But I think today what happened is that what is passing off as journalism is not journalism. Honest journalists, honest reportage must necessarily be given the sort of the institution, the sort of protection which any Indian citizen is entitled to. But I think the time has certainly come for us to take a good hard look at whether the entire media fraternity, what we describe to be a media fraternity, does that media fraternity deserve the same kind of leniency, the same kind of protection which is meant for honest journalists? A lot has been made out about technology being chiefly responsible for bulking fake news. I can tell you without taking. Yeah.
Bhupendraji, your audio is cracking. So, is it possible for you to just repeat what you just said for the benefit of the audience? The video also, please. No, it's still cracking up. No, it's still electrifying.
Let me just go into non. Just one. Is it fine now? Is it better now? Is it okay?
It's better. Definitely, it's better than before. But still, it's not clear.
I just moved the mic closer to me.
Sure.
Is this fine? Is it okay now? Better now?
No, it's still not very clear.
I don't know, yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Is it fine? Is it fine? 1, 2, 3. Check.
The voice is electrifying.
Electrifying. Oh, is it echoing? Is the voice echoing?
It's echoing, yes.
Okay. Better now? Is it better now? What I try and do? Let me just see if I can switch off the video. If I switch off the video, then maybe it'll be better. Can you hear me now? Is your audio better now?
Now the audio is better.
Yeah. So what we do is I just take a piece so that you guys can hear me clearly, and then I bring my video back again. Sometimes
no, the audio is again lost. So what we'll do is we'll try to reconnect with you. We'll have you back again.
Okay.
And we'll right now move on to a third guest.
Okay.
So I thank Bhupendraji as of now. He'll be back again where we'll sort out the video and the audio issues. And now I feel honored to invite Honorable Mr. Justice Retired Badar Durrez MSG to share his views and thoughts on the topic. Honorable Mr. Justice Badar Durrez MSG is former Chief Justice of Jammu Kashmir High Court and Judge of Delhi High Court. He has served as Acting Chief Justice of Delhi High Court for 2 times. Prior to his practice of law, He was a lecturer in economics in St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi. He practiced in the Delhi High Court and Supreme Court below before being elevated to the bench in 2002. During his entire tenure as a judge and Chief Justice, spanning well over 15 years, he was a prolific decision maker, having thousands of reported judgments to his credit on all branches of law, whether it be civil, criminal, commercial, taxation, environmental law, personal laws, constitutional laws, etc. He was a member of the National Court Management Systems Committee and an invited member of the Supreme Court E Committee. He is keenly interested in computers and knows several computer programming languages and has written two standalone accounting software packages for lawyers. He is a keen sportsman and played cricket and football for the school. He pioneered the introduction of paperless e-courts in the Delhi High Court and later in the Jammu and Kashmir High Court. There, he initiated the process of hearing court cases through video conferencing between Jammu and Srinagar, and far-flung areas such as Kargil and Leh. He has and continues to advocate the use of technology in courtrooms and arbitration proceedings for the cherished goal of swift, efficient, and transparent delivery of justice. All throughout, he encouraged young members of the bar. Young lawyers have very fond memories of appearing before him. Since his retirement as a Chief Justice in March 2018, he has been and continues to be an arbitrator in several domestic and international arbitration. He was also the ombudsman of the DDCA. Now I would like to invite Sir to please give his thoughts on the topic.
Thank you, Piyush. Thank you for Lawyer's Voice to invite me to this discussion. The topic is, of course, a very interesting one because we are dealing with a world which is divided into two sectors. The first sector is what is the real world, and the second is what is the virtual world. Now, when we transit from the real world to the virtual world, and that is helped by the use of technology, there can be a lot of problems in as much as what is reality may not be projected as what exists in the virtual world. And essentially, that is the problem of fake news, because people tend to misrepresent facts, or in fact even invent facts which are not there in reality and project them in the virtual world. Now, in the olden days, this was possible. Of course, people could spread fake news by word of mouth, but the spread was not as much as can be done through the medium of technology, internet, and 4G, broadband, etc. So therefore, the concept of fake news takes on a much larger scope and amplitude. Now, there is a dividing line between what is freedom of expression and what is fake news. Now, I do not entirely agree with Mr. Sharma when he said that protests could impinge on freedom of expression and speech and expression. In fact, any kind of protest by the general public at large or sections of the public, which is peaceful and within the four corners of law, would fall within the right guaranteed under the article of freedom of speech and expression. If somebody feels that he is aggrieved and injustice is being meted out to him, then it is his right to protest, so that the powers that be and even the courts would realize the injustice and try to remove the injustice from what he is experiencing. There is, of course, another aspect to it, that any kind of wrong information, misinformation, or factual inaccuracy should not be permitted to be perpetrated, particularly if it causes a cleavage between different sections of society, if it causes a cleavage between the rich and the poor, or if it causes some sort of a disturbance in the peace and tranquility of the nation. And that is, in fact, the most important thing that we have to see and analyze and ensure that that is checked and protected. Now, how do we do that is the problem that faces not only the society, but it faces society at large, but it also faces the judiciary and the law implementing agencies. Now, fake news or news which does not exist in reality can be spread like wildfire using the medium of technology. And I think that just like any road or highway can be used by good people and by people for traveling from one place to another place to meet their family and friends, or by commercial vehicles for transporting goods and for other normal uses, the same highway can be used by criminals for carrying out their criminal intent and their objectives. In just the same way, the technology that we have today, that is through the internet and all these social media platforms, can be used by good people and can be misused by people whose intentions are not good and intend to create friction or to make people commit crimes. Now, this is where the difficulty lies as to how you identify what is fake news. Uh, Unfortunately, what happens is that people tend to believe what they want to believe. And it may not be true at all, but since you want to believe it, you will believe it. So there lies the difficulty. And it is therefore a onerous task, not only for the law implementing agencies, to ensure that they also don't fall victim to fake news and to, uh, let us say, filter out what is true and only believe in what is true and not be carried away by what is not true. There are many things which can be checked immediately, and fact checking is a very important part of filtering out what is known as fake news. Even for the courts, I think it is important that the judicial system is alive to the situation, because the spread of fake news can be potentially very, very dangerous. And the courts must be able to discern as to what is fake news. They must be able to ensure that fake news is curtailed. There are enough provisions under the Indian Penal Code. There are enough provisions in the Information Technology Act where under action can be taken. In fact, if the courts are willing and the judges are willing and the cases are brought to the court, then I'm sure that the judiciary, being made aware of the situation, can take its decisions within the four corners of law as it exists today. But while we are checking fake news, we must also ensure, and that is the duty of the courts and the judiciary, that the fundamental right enshrined in Article 19 of freedom of speech and expression is not curtailed in any manner, because that is one of the foundations of a democratic polity. So I think with these words, I may not be in entire agreement with Mr. Sharma with regard to the protests that have taken place and whether they were exceeding the freedom of speech and expression. Insofar as protests are concerned, as I pointed out earlier, they are a part of freedom of speech and expression, and they should not be curtailed in any manner. Insofar as journalism is concerned, journalism also, as Mr. Chaubey pointed out, must be honest, in the sense that, like we used to see in the olden days, where journalists never printed or published anything which was unverified. Unfortunately, of late, we have noticed that journalists, and particularly in the electronic media, tend to pass on information as real, which is actually fake. And while there is a need to protect honest journalists and honest journalism, because it is their right of freedom of speech and expression, and we should not never curb that. At the same time, the people who tend to pass off fake news as real ought to be brought to book. So I think these are my opening views on this topic.
I thank Justice Badar Ahmed ji for his words of wisdom. Now I would like to have Mr. Bhupendra Chaubey ji back on the screen to continue with his thoughts on the topic.
Yeah,
Good to have you back,
I
sir.
hope I'm. Yeah, thanks. I hope I'm visible and audible
Yes,
properly.
it's clear
I'm
and
just going to
visible.
keep my mic closed. I was earlier on a Bluetooth piece. I'll just pick off from where I left off. The sum and substance of my argument is pretty much in consonance with what is being stated by Justice Ahmed. But instead, if I was to say that fake news exists and is rampant, it would be stating the obvious. It's like saying, sun rises from a particular direction. Does fake news exist? Of course it exists. I would want to steer this discussion to what can be done to prevent fake news. What are some of the instances which have ended up, I think, damaging the cause of honest journalism as well as weakening our democracy? And being compared to honest journalism, I think, is the biggest disservice which can be done. A lawyer friend of mine was just pointing out to me a couple of days back that, say, if you were to go to a market and buy toothpaste, and if that toothpaste ends up being poisonous or ends up not conforming to certain standards of selling, then your rights as a consumer end up being protected. Now look at what happens in the case of fake news or news industry per se. News as a news information dissemination mechanism, which somehow also becomes a commodity because news is being consumed. If you are the news provider and I'm the news consumer, and I'm simply consuming everything that you're giving to me, and I'm paying for this, then why should my rights as a consumer of news not be the same as my rights to a consumer of a specific product? I think the time has come for us to really try and really take the bull by its horns. I was talking about it before the internet sort of collapsed. That my disillusionment with the topmost echelons of the judiciary is that somewhere, despite all this talk and despite all this unease which gets sort of publicized in various platforms, judges of the Supreme Court ultimately shy away from recommending or directing what really needs to be done to stem this rot. What is fake news for me will be described by someone else as completely authentic news. And when you take that case to a court of law, ultimately the topmost jurists in this country end up saying that self-regulation is the best mechanism. I think one thing which we need to accept and state without any fear, and I say this as a journalist, I think this business of self-regulation has failed. I don't think self-regulation in times of social media, in times where television media is broadcasting, real-time information without the due processes which you need for verification, I think there has to be a new system of regulation. Can it be court monitored, as uncomfortable as it may appear to be? Can it be some new system which can be created, an ombudsman kind of philosophy? Maybe much like what Justice J.S. Sharma attempted to do during his lifetime when he set up a new broadcasting federation. Now we all know that even the News Broadcasters Association that was created also has ended up becoming a victim of politics, and different stakeholders and different media tycoons have had their own positions on that. I think the need of the hour really is not to look left or right. Fake news is here. Fake news is a reality. I think this discussion with so many lawyers and Honorable Justice Ahmed also on the panel, it needs to identify the roadmap ahead, what needs to be done. The existing Press Council of India Act, the existing regulations which exist, self-regulation largely, they're not working out. If there is a legal template that needs to be created for better dissemination of news, and if it means that it may be in conflict with my so-called editorial independence, editorial judgment, then so be it. Because anyways, editorial judgment has brought us to this scenario where rampant purveying of fake news is going on in the name of honest journalism. Back to you.
I thank Shri Bhupendra ji for his words of wisdom. Now, I would like to invite questions from the audience on today's topic. Before I begin, I would like to remind that viewers are invited to post their question in the comment box on YouTube and Facebook. And please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. We have several questions coming in, but due to time constraints, we will be taking only 5 or 6 of them. First, we have with us a question from Ms. Neha Garg. Ms. Neha, please tell us your question, and if anyone specifically from the panel you would like to have it answered from. Ms. Neha.
I'd like Justice Ahmed to please answer my question.
Sir, the question from Ms. Neha is for you. Please go ahead, Neha.
Sir, don't you think that fixing the liability of the intermediates is one of the most effective countermeasures to curb fake news?
That there has been some discussion on that the liability of intermediates like WhatsApp and Twitter and other social media platforms, if the liability is fixed on them, then it may amount to a good countermeasure for spread of fake news like wildfire. But at the same time, as I spoke in the initial thing, opening portion, social media, internet are just like a highway. Now, if you make the platforms liable in toto, then what happens is that the highway gets shut down and nothing travels through that. So that not only affects the movement of good traffic, but bad traffic, but it also affects the movement of good traffic. And so if you are just looking at the liability of intermediates and not at anything else, then I don't think that it would be a complete solution. On the other hand, what we have to see is who is the originator of that piece of fake news. And first of all, we have to decide as to whether that piece of information is fake news or not. So there must be some fact checking to be done. Secondly, after the fact check is done and it is found that that piece of information, or let's not call it information, that piece of whatever is circulated is fake and is conjured up and is far from reality and is not the truth, then we must try to identify as to who the originator is. Now, you may be aware that recently, because of certain government regulations, the number of forwards that you can do of a particular message has been limited to maybe 4 or 5. And each time you forward a message in WhatsApp, you are notified that this message is being indicated as a forward. So in other words, that the intermediary is able and has the technology to find out whether it is an original message which has originated with somebody, or it is a forward which is being forwarded by a person who has received this information. Now, once that can be determined, that means you can backtrack and trace the whole sequence of events and go back to the person who originated. Once that person who originated is identified, then the law should take its course and he should be brought to book and be punished for it. And in this, I think the judiciary has to play a very important role, that a person who has been found to be the originator of fake news must be tackled under the provisions of the law, and if found guilty, he must be given the punishment that is provided in the law. That is the only way in which fake news can be curtailed. Apart from this, you can also spread the message of people to people at large, that don't just forward anything that you receive on your WhatsApp or Twitter or whatever it is, but just try to do a little bit of fact checking. And there are a lot of fact checking sites available on the internet before a particular piece of video clip or an audio clip is forwarded. So I think the role is not to be placed entirely on the intermediary, but on various stakeholders.
Thank you, sir. Now we will have a question from Mr. Himanshu Patak. Mr. Himanshu, please tell us your question. And if anyone specifically you would like to have it answered from, Mr. Himanshu.
Yeah, a very good evening to all of you. My question is for Chetan Sharma, sir.
Chetanji, good evening. The question is for you from Mr. Himanshu.
Good evening, sir.
Please go ahead, Mr. Himanshu.
Sir, does India need a law criminalizing false news like Singapore, as they have the law, sir, that is the protection from online falsehood and manipulation law? And secondly, sir, whether certain amendments are really required in the Indian penal in the IPC, sir, Indian Penal Code, to that effect?
Himanshu, I think I had a premonition as to what would be the question. And I have, in my opening remarks, and I apologize for the audio, suggested the addition or the insertion of amendments to to sections 270 and 505. I've suggested the addition of 505A and also suggested 271A to be added to the existing provision. And I think that on the lines of Singapore, we also need to have a full-scale act or a full-scale mechanism in place which will define what is fake news, which will define who is the originator of fake news. We should also have that act to say how far it goes, how far it can impact, what will be the liability, what will be the ultimate culpability. That law needs to be put in place, but with utmost deference to Justice Badar Durrez ji, whom I have always held in the highest of respects and regard. I would also, wanted to just say this humble caveat. I never said that there should be no protest. I'm only saying this as my Lord Justice Durrez Ahmed says, that there's a highway. It will be used by the good traffic. It will be used by the bad traffic. My point is that there is a bad traffic which you know is there to create mayhem on the road, on the highway, and cut out the good traffic. So I want that deterrence in place to say that the traffic must go on, protests must go on, but they should not cross a line where they disrupt the social and the cultural and the fabric of integrity, which is India. That is the only point. I have not seen a democracy, any democracy in the world, which has allowed the extent of the vitriol to go to this extent, which it has gone in recent months. And therefore, I suggested that merely keeping it at non-cognizable level will not serve any purpose. Merely keeping it at 200 rupees fine in 153 or a 3-year term will not serve the purpose. It has to be, if you disrupt a whole fabric, if you disrupt and sever the integrity of the nation, you have to be visited with consequences. That's my point. Protest, yes, it's an integral part. It must come. I'm all for protest, but protest to a limit where it does not harm, the fabric of society or national interest. And therefore, 505 capital A, 271A, a social legislation incorporating the aspects of Information Technology Act, Section 66 and 67, along with the lines of Singapore. And you see, Brazil has also done this. Brazil did a WhatsApp verificado, and WhatsApp in India was also, they also, tried to do it by checkpoint and tip line. So till such time that you go to the originator will be found or not found 5 years, the damage would have been done. I would want to look at a situation where damage is also curtailed, balanced with the right of protest. It has to be a balance. It can't be complete freedom. It can't be complete on the other side. There has to be a balance. in view of the fact as to what is the obtaining situation on the ground. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll move on to the next question from the audience. We have with us Mr. Anish Roy. Mr. Anish, please tell us your question and who is it addressed to on the panel?
Good evening, everyone. My question is for Mr. Bhupendra Chaubey.
Mr. Bhupendra Chaubey.
Yes, the question. What's the question, Piyush?
Yes, Mr. Anish, please go ahead with the question.
So the question is, fake news may seem new, but I think the platform news is the only new thing about it. Earlier also there were rumors and false news. So how far is it correct to blame the social media alone?
I said, I think it's completely missing the boat for the trees. If we were,
Sir, your video and audio is frozen.
Can you hear my audio? Can you hear me?
No, so your audio is electrifying again.
It's still fine. Achha, is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. I think there is some issue with current Piyush because a couple of times I think it's another audio. So anyway, just to answer what Anish is saying, I'm completely in agreement, and I say this with full responsibility, that to simply lay the blame of weighing of fake news at the doorsteps of social media, I think is missing wood for the trees. I think large sections of mainstream media are as guilty. They are as guilty, I think, as any other platform for spreading of this fake news, which is why I'm going to the extent of saying that those days of simply letting self-regulation be the model, those days are gone. I don't subscribe to this theory that only and only social media is responsible for spreading fake news. Social media amplifies fake news, but conventional media, electronic media, if it ends up borrowing those hashtags and if it ends up putting those stories as if they were their own stories, then that shows that there is a problem of editorial filters across newsrooms. Now, if editorial filters have collapsed, then why should you just blame social media? You should. We must have the courage and the bravado to accept that maybe things are not all completely hunky dory as they should be or as they used to be at one point of time. The other point, Anish, is also this: every time these days when we raise questions against the media, and I myself have been a bitter critique of my own dispensation and issues. We were always told that this is nothing new, that stories got distorted, or let's say a particular bent of mind, a particular slant always existed. Even in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Well, be that as it may, it existed then. It doesn't mean that it shall continue to exist now. Which is why I was making this fervent appeal to Justice Ahmed and to everyone else on this panel that time has really come for us to take this bull by its horns. You require a new approach. You require a new template. I do not think that simply saying self-regulation, let media discharge its responsibilities is going to solve this crisis. It won't. It is only going to further throw us into more degeneration. It'll create more problems for us in the future.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll have next question from Mr. Prashant Rawat. Mr. Rawat, please tell us your question and who is it addressed to on the panel?
Yes, I would like to ask my question to retired Honorable Justice Badar, sir.
Your voice is not clear, Prashant.
I would like my question from retired Honorable Justice Badar, sir.
Please go ahead.
Respected sir, my question is, how do we balance between one's free speech with others' access to accurate information, as banning the fake news might be violative of one's freedom of expression?
Right. I got your question. See, fake news can never be, if it is determined to be fake news, can never be part of freedom of expression, because what a person is doing is spreading information which is not correct, and he knows it to be not correct. Now, I'll give you an example. There have been many cases where people have spread information that there was one case in Assam where people spread information that certain persons traveling in a particular vehicle are child abductors. Now that was out and out fake information. And because of that information, those persons traveling in that car were stopped and they were lynched by the mob and they died, when in fact they were not child abductors at all. So you have similar situations, whether it is on communalism, whether it is on child abduction, whether it is on some other form of hate crime. Fake news is spread with an intention. The person who instigates that information knows very well that that fake news can end up in a crime being committed. And this is where I say that if such a fake news is perpetrated, then obviously it is a crime and will not be protected by the guarantee given under Article 19 of freedom of speech and expression. In fact, it will be a crime because I see it that provisions of the IPC can be used. For example, it can be used as an abetment to the crime of murder. The lynching that was done by X and Y at the instigation of A and B, the A and B can also be punished for the same murder which has been done by X and Y. And that is part of the abetment law. Now, coming back to the question of whether you can ban fake news, you can't ban news. Now, news includes certain information which is not true, that is fake news. Now, that has to be sifted, as I pointed out earlier, it has to be filtered. And the persons who are perpetrating that news need to be booked and to be found out. Technology exists today where you can find out who is the originator of that news. And this is where proper policing and proper investigative methods are required. We cannot, as Mr. Chaubey pointed out, that self-regulation may not be the answer. We need a new approach. That is correct. But what is the new approach? The new approach is that our investigative systems must be thoroughly up to date in detection of crimes, in detection of spread of fake news, which according to me is a crime, and to immediately bring that person to justice. Now, unless and until we have that approach, and secondly, what is more important is that the investigative agency must be completely unbiased. Whoever is the perpetrator of the crime or the perpetrator of the false news must be booked, whether he likes that false news or he doesn't like that false news. And this must be curtailed at the very threshold. And such cases must be fast-tracked and brought to the courts as early as possible with full evidence. And the courts should also be, and the judges should also be in tune with the new technology to understand that how rapidly fake news and false news is spread through this modern method of social media, through internet. And it is not the same thing as somebody writing a fake piece of information in an obscure journal. Here, even an obscure person can instigate a viral video or a viral audio, which may ultimately end up in the commission of a crime, and which may create a cleavage between different sections of society. And therefore, it becomes very, very important to ensure that such things are dealt with, but within the four corners of law, and also at the same time balancing and safeguarding what is known as freedom of speech and expression. Because you cannot, using the fact of banning or curtailing fake speech, also curtail and ban genuine speech. We can't do that. That is one of the most treasured rights that people have, and in fact, which journalists have, in bringing to the notice of the general public at large as to what is really happening. So I think that ultimately, yes, Mr. Chaubey is right that new approaches have to be taken into, but we have to balance the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression with the fact of finding out, curtailing, and bringing the perpetrators to justice.
Thank you, sir. Now we'd like to move on to the next question. We have a question from Mr. Kushagra Kansal. Mr. Kansal, please tell us your question, and if anyone you would like to specifically answer from.
Sir, my question to the panel is that misinformation in relation to public health is the worst kind of fake news as it risks people's life. Don't you think that fake news is further complicating India's war against COVID-19?
So the question is open to the panel. So may I invite Justice Ahmed first to answer the question?
What exactly did he, with regard to the COVID-19?
Kushagra, can you just repeat the question? It's
No, I've
also
understood it. It's with regard to COVID-19. Yes, you're right. I mean, a lot of people can spread a lot of information and fake news and fake treatments. I mean, a lot of people have been going on the social media and saying this, such and such, and if you do such and such a thing, you will be cured. And that may be counterproductive. So I think what is required is scientific fact checking, and what is required is to look at official data as to the extent of the spread of the virus, and check all the facts before we tend to advise others, because there are experts in the field who know. I mean, there are virologists, there are epidemiologists. We must listen to what they are saying, and doctors, and then try to pass on information to others. On our own, we should not conjure up any facts or details about which we are not aware of. For example, Mr. Sharma is a lawyer. So if you go and ask a doctor about a legal problem, I mean, that will not serve the purpose. You will have to come to Mr. Sharma to get advice on legal matters. And similarly, if you are suffering from a heart ailment, you won't go to Mr. Chetan Sharma, but you will go to a doctor who is a cardiologist. So similarly, you have to look for experts to verify what is the information with regard to the pandemic, with regard to COVID-19, and then only believe what is there. It is up to citizens also to realize as to what to believe and what not to believe. We must develop a scientific temper, and we must try to verify these facts. So it is true that in the case of a pandemic where people spread false information about the disease and the cures, is very dangerous, because it can be a matter of life and death for that person or for other persons. So we have to be very careful as to what we are passing on or forwarding. We must fact check first and see what the experts say.
Thank you, sir. Chetan, sir, can we have your views on the question?
I couldn't agree more with my favorite judge.
For a lot of us.
I still consider him one of the finest. I still consider him one of the finest judges and one of the best gentlemen that we have all seen in all these years.
Thank you, Mr.
I couldn't agree with him there. But
thank you.
But there is just one caveat again, not on a note of disagreement. You see, I was just noticing a message which emanated from Italy. Now, this says that COVID-19, the latest, is not a virus. It's a bacteria, because they probably did an autopsy. Yes, they did an autopsy on a patient they should not have done. And they found that it's a bacteria, it's not a virus. Now, if you come back to the viruses, they say that the virus mutates itself in so many forms that the virus in India keeps on changing. So therefore, what was a typical symptom is now 43% or 36% are asymptomatic. So this is all changing all the time. You have cures which are coming in. They said, jab garmi aayegi, to COVID chala jayega. They can't take 45 degrees of temperature, but COVID is booming. So you don't know what is coming. Now, the fact is that, yes, we'll have to go to experts, but in this case, even the experts seem to be floundering. Every third day, we have somebody saying that iska vaccine September tak aa raha hai, iska vaccine aa gaya, iska cure aa gaya hai. The Israelis have done the cure, the Japanese have done the cure. So there has to be, as we can go along with this, but yes, there should be a stop from quacks and from people who do not know the subject from espousing anything. Let's leave it to the good sense of the experts. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Now, next we'll have a question from Mr. Mohit Joshi. Mr. Mohit, please tell us your question and
Good evening,
who on
sir.
the panel it is addressed to.
Sir, my question is for Mr. Chetan Sharma, sir.
Chetanji, the question is for you. Please go ahead, Mohit.
Sir, my question is, what is the role of Election Commission of India in tackling with fake news during the election campaigning period?
I couldn't get the full import of your question, Mohit.
Mohit, please repeat.
Yes, sir. Sir, what is the role of Election Commission of India in tackling with fake news during the election campaigning period?
See, we have seen the Election Commission being more busy, probably than even the voters in the last election. It was a routine procession from one party, one candidate to another. The role of the commission is crucial. The role of the commission is indeed crucial. But the fact of the matter is that does the commission have enough teeth? If it has enough teeth, is it willing to wield that? To what extent can it go? To what extent it cannot go? These are questions which will arise in future also. And to my mind, I think that the Election Commission should have powers to have their own investigative agencies in place insofar as the elections are concerned. Insofar as WhatsApp is concerned, insofar as Instagram or Twitter is concerned, they will have these new online checks. They will then give a show cause notice under the Representation of People's Act to the offending party and deal with it in the manner the law would mandate them to do. My only point is that supposing there is a highly mischievous or a very, very corrupt practice of fake news which comes to the notice of the Election Commission, then there should be suitable amendments to the Representation in the People's Act to consider as to how many votes it will affect. That's a decision to be taken by the Commission. And that number of votes could be nota. Those number of votes could be taken out if the crime is so heinous. Because unless and until you put the fear of the law in the minds of those people who are bent upon mischief, I am only singling out that section which is not at all constructive in its approach, which means to create negativity and division. To that extent, the Election Commission should be empowered more under the prevalent law, entitling it to have access even to the provisions of the IPC.
Thank you, sir. Now let's call the question answer round to an end. And I would like to hand over the proceedings to Advocate Shri Neeraj Ji. Neeraj Ji is presently Additional Advocate General for the State of Haryana at Supreme Court of India, as well as Senior Central Government Standing Counsel at Armed Forces Tribunal. Personally speaking, in one voice, he is always there and standing by lawyers. The force behind lawyers' voice, he has also been former Secretary of New Delhi Bar Association. I request Neeraj Ji, please give your remarks on the discussion today and parting thoughts on the topic.
थैंक यू पीयूष। आज का जो ये डिस्कशन रहा, जो लॉयर्स वॉइस ने ये सोच करके कि आज देश में क्या चल रहा है, जब से सोशल मीडिया का ट्रेंड चालू हुआ तब से ये चीज़ें कि किसी की पिक्चर को जोड़ तोड़ करके लगा करके जो चीज़ें चल रही थी, यह सोचा कि क्यों ना इस टॉपिक के ऊपर एक डिस्कशन कराया जाए, लोगों के व्यूज, पूरे देश भर के लोगों के व्यूज क्या हैं, उसके बारे में क्या उनके क्वेश्चंस हैं, उसके बारे में उनको डिस्कस करा जा सके। इन सारी चीज़ों को सोच करके जो आज का ये प्रोग्राम रखा, मैं सबसे पहले जो आज हमारे इस डिस्कशन में लॉयर्स वॉइस के आग्रह पर जस्टिस बदर दुर्रेज अहमद साहब, जिनका कि हमें हमेशा सहयोग मिलता रहा है और वो एक जाने माने न्यायविद के साथ साथ एक ह्यूमन बीइंग है। जैसा कि जब मैं सेक्रेटरी था नई दिल्ली बार एसोसिएशन का, जब भी कोई हमें प्रॉब्लम होती थी, जब भी कोई बात होती थी, हमेशा हमारी मदद करते थे। ऐसे ही मिस्टर चेतन शर्मा, सीनियर एडवोकेट, जिनका कि हमेशा हमें सहयोग मिलता रहा है, मैं उनको भी धन्यवाद दूंगा। आज के इस समय में उन्होंने समय निकाल करके पूरा पार्टिसिपेशन जो इसमें किया, लोगों की जो क्वेरीज थी उनका जवाब दिया, इस डिस्कशन में अपनी बात रखी, क्या कानून में चेंजेज होने चाहिए। और जैसा जस्टिस बदर दुरेज अहमद साहब ने कहा कि हमारे पास में कानून ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल हैं, यदि जुडिशियल सिस्टम हमारा ठीक से प्रोमिनेंटली और प्रोमिनेंट तरीके से इसको डील करे, तो यह जो फेक न्यूज की जो समस्या है उससे काफी हद तक हम इसको बिना कानून में कोई परिवर्तन करे हुए हम उसमें कामयाब हो सकते हैं। हमें पूरा सहयोग मिला। कुछ थोड़ी प्रॉब्लम भूपेंद्र जी के जो नेटवर्किंग में थी, शायद कुछ प्रॉब्लम रही, क्योंकि आज बारिश आ गई थी, काफी बारिश हुई है, उस वजह से हो सकता है कि काफी प्रॉब्लम कुछ हो सकता है, कुछ प्रॉब्लम रही हो। मैं सभी जो पार्टिसिपेंट हैं, सभी जिन्होंने इस प्रोग्राम को सफल बनाने में अपना सहयोग दिया, सभी का मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। देश भर से काफी लोग हमारे साथ जुड़े, मैं उन सभी का धन्यवाद देता हूं। हमारी टीम ने, सुमेंदु, सत्या, अंकित, पीयूष जी, अनिल सोनी जी, सभी ने बहुत अच्छे से इसमें काम किया, पूरे प्रोग्राम को सफल बनाने में अपना समय लगाया। मैं सभी का धन्यवाद देता हूं। हम फिर मिलेंगे, फिर दोबारा से कोई अच्छे प्रोग्राम करेंगे, और सभी जो आज के वक्ता रहे उनका भी हमें सहयोग मिलता रहेगा। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. So to conclude, it's been a successful program, and for the same, I thank our audience, distinguished guests, and Advocate Ajay Dikpalji, President of Lawyers Voice, and members of the organizing team, Mr. Sumit Nagpalji, Somendra Mukherjee ji, Satya Ranjan ji, Ankit Raj ji, Priya Mishra ji, for making this live panel discussion a success. First among many to come in near future. Stay tuned. Online is the new real discussion. Corona has possibly changed how we'll go about in the world in the coming times. 2 months back, possibly this discussion would have been in some auditorium, but now it's been with people sitting at different places and coming together and making it a grand success. With parting thoughts, I'll request the audience to please subscribe to the YouTube channel. धन्यवाद जस्टिस साहब, धन्यवाद चेतन शर्मा जी, धन्यवाद नीरज जी, धन्यवाद अनिल जी, सबको मेरा पीयूष बेरीवाल का नमस्कार।
थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू।